Yes, welcome in. Well, the Badgers got big news, Jesse, and that news came from you, and I'll let you deliver it here to start the show.
Ricardo Hallman is coming back for a fifth season with the Badgers. Told me that he was. I think we'd all been wondering what the hell is going on. When's the NFL deadline? When's he going to make it? All that stuff. And so he said that he will be returning. And that's obviously maybe the biggest offseason news that the Badgers could have from a roster perspective, given what he has meant to this program. He's played in 37 games, 33 starts, started every game the last 2 years, and been a key component to the defense. So, yes, Rico is back, baby. And I guess that's a good thing for the Badgers.
Yes, we're going to jump into that. A couple more guys that are back as well, veteran guys that maybe a little under the radar in terms of whether they be back or not, but they are back, and we'll talk about those as well. We've got, obviously, the coaching staff being filled out. Jordan Reed finishing that off. However, I guess I should say there's going to be the 10 full-time assistants are filled out. Obviously going to be some analysts and that type of stuff filling in here as well over the next day or so. And then it'll be complete as they get ready for winter conditioning and then spring ball. So we'll get into Jordan Reed and what it means to get that finalized. And then we may have we'll have a little bit of time to talk about Xavier Lucas and more. That was not about Xavier Lucas. That was about his tiresome attorney, Darren Heitner. So we'll talk about that for a little bit too. Not like, oh, this is what's going to happen and that's what's going to happen. Just how things are playing out. We'll talk about that. So before we do, Home Field Apparel is the official apparel sponsor of the camp. They have unmatched vintage gear in the college game. Check them out, homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code Bucky24 for 15% off your first purchase. All right, let's dive into this. As you said, Ricardo Hallman is back. It's a huge add back in because we know what has happened at the corner spot for them this offseason with all the guys heading out. We got a couple of, veterans coming in Jimmy Lattimore and Yanni Hill. So they do. It's not like they don't have other guys there, but getting Ricardo back. And I know he did not have the season that he wanted this past year. Some of that I think is on him and some of that's on the other team and wanting to attack the other side of the ball. I think you laid it out in your story, like half of the action that he saw in 2023 compared to what he saw in 2024. So his stats did not match up to what he did in 23 with the 7 interceptions, including the one taken back for a touchdown. He did not have any interceptions this year, but it is significant to add back into that defense because now, and I think we talked about the other day, they essentially got 3 starters back, 3 of their 5 starters back, and going into this next season.
You can't replace the experience and also the knowledge of just being here, what he'll mean for the leadership on the back end, but the defense in general. I don't know where he would have gone if he had pursued the NFL draft. That's obviously part of this, and I'm sure NIL is a part of this too. What can you make with one more year? But his value to this team is immense. I mentioned previously how much he's played here the last 3 years, the 33 starts. But you look at the numbers and just on paper, you say, oh, what happened? He had no interceptions when he had 7 the year before. But they threw in his direction, I think, 33 times on 300 plus coverage snaps, which is among the fewest that you'll see in college football. And yeah, there were some situations where he would have liked to have had plays back, but I think it also speaks to the level of respect that he commanded from other teams when they saw what he put on film in 2023. And Wisconsin's cornerback room has been decimated this offseason by transfer portal losses. Obviously, you have Nazir Forkurian and you've got RJ Delancey using up eligibility. A year ago, they had 11 scholarship cornerbacks going into the year, and right now they have 7. Now they're not done trying to add. We'll see whether they're able to do that. But there's only 3 upperclassmen in that room, and Rico is the only one of those 3 who was here a year ago. You mentioned Hill they got from Miami, and Lattimore they got from Jacksonville State. But Rico is really the foundation of that back end, and he's going to be a huge difference for them.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right, though, in the idea that there's some plays that he wanted back. Like, I think Alabama, certain teams didn't shy away from him. I think that's fair to say. Like, Alabama went at everybody, and everybody struggled. It was not a good day for the Wisconsin defense. I thought even late in the season, Minnesota didn't care, and I don't think Nebraska cared either. And so but again, he put on tape in 2023 the type of player that he is and the type of player that he can be, and uh, didn't get nearly as many opportunities. And when they came, unfortunately, I mean, it's not like he dropped. I think he had one dropped interception, maybe. I think there was one. I think at Rutgers, maybe he dropped one. But other than that, like there just weren't a ton of opportunities to come his way, and we'll see. I'm intrigued by what they're going to do defensively this year, and here's the other aspect of not having any interceptions. They also had no pass rush. They had 0 pass rush, and you could have the best corners in the game. You could have the best secondary in the game, and if you don't get pressure, it's not going to matter. Guys are going to get open if you're not getting home to the quarterback. And Wisconsin this year, as we illustrated when we were talking about the other day, did not get home to the quarterback nearly enough. And also playing short yardage, or I should say playing short third downs so often because they couldn't stop the run. There's a lot that goes, I think, into it. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but because he knows he needs to be better. But I think there's more to it than just simply he wasn't as good as he was in 2023.
The best defenses Wisconsin have had is because of what they had in the front, and they clearly go hand in hand, because if you're able to generate pressure and make a quarterback uncomfortable, he's going to deliver a ball into a window that he probably shouldn't, and it gives the corner more time to try and make a play. We mentioned before that they ranked dead last in the FBS in tackles for loss, and they weren't much better in sacks. And so that speaks to the inability to get into the backfield. So we'll see whether it's substantially different this season. We talked, they've overhauled clearly the defensive line, and maybe that will help Rico. But again, you can't overstate the importance of having a guy like this back, because if you were to go to the portal, you would not find somebody with that level of experience, because they wouldn't be transferring. They wouldn't be coming to a place like Wisconsin. They'd either be coming back where they are or going to the NFL.
Yeah. It is unfortunate that he was dealing with that shoulder injury coming off of last year, because I feel like he may have gone, and I don't know if he talked about that or not, but he may have gone after 23 if he hadn't had the surgery, correct?
Yeah, I think he did mention, I think he talked about that in the preseason. Just he wasn't going to have a chance to do the things that you need to do to show scouts when they want to go evaluate you. And it would have been one of those strike while the iron is hot. Hard to get much better than 7 interceptions, where you're tied for the national lead, and it's the most any Wisconsin players had since 2007. But I think that did play a factor.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? But he's back. I also think he's a good cornerback. I think he's best when he's got his eyes on the quarterback, because it feels like he's really good at reading what he wants or what that quarterback wants. And that's obviously more zone than it is man coverage. And you think about some of the interceptions that he had. I'm thinking Ohio State in 23 for sure. But the play against Rutgers was also a ton of film study. So it's not like he's not one thing. I think he's got the ability to do a whole bunch of different things, but he's a smart player. He's a guy that enjoys watching film. And we saw that play out in that Rutgers game where they had run the exact same thing the week before, and he had seen it and was like, all right, well, if they do it, I'm going to jump it. He jumped it, and it was a huge play before the end of the first half in that Rutgers game, where Wisconsin's offense wasn't really necessarily doing much of anything. And I don't know if you've heard that or once or twice in the last 2 years, but he turned that game on its head with that play. So he's got that type of ability, and to get him back is significant. So breaking down, this depth chart at this point at corner, you have those 3 veterans, and then it's filling in some of the young guys behind him, whether it's an Emilio Agard or whether it's Jay Harper, or whether it's even the guys that they're bringing in as true freshmen. But I feel, and I think this was clear from Twitter and social media and message boards and everybody else that was talking about this yesterday, you feel significantly better about that spot right now than you did at this time yesterday.
Of course you do, because without it, you're down to 6 cornerbacks, and you don't have any upperclassmen that have been here. And this is a guy that 2 years ago was a 3rd-team AP All-American. So adding that, like I said before, is among the more substantial roster moves that Wisconsin could have this offseason. And I think the back end, they've got a lot of options. I'll be interested to see whether Austin Brown ends up filling that slot role or whether there's somebody else that comes in that they think is better positioned for that. Austin played 200 plus snaps in the slot last season. It may have some to do with what they think they have at safety, including the portal guys. They have Preston Zachman back, but Matt Young, Matthew Trainer from Richmond. They have some pieces there, but there's still a long way to go to figure out how that's going to look.
Yeah, and Raphael Dunn's back there as well, as one of the the young returning guys, the ones that didn't jump into the portal. Yeah, everybody else feeling good about it, or feeling better about it. I think I am too. And again, I don't. They're not done adding, and they're not done. They're not done. I'll say that. Yeah, they're not done. Just in how they're going to try and build out the secondary. So that's the secondary part of it. But there was also a couple of names at the bottom of your story that I don't know are huge surprises because Ben Barton did not walk on senior day. So there was that. And Aaron Witt has probably like 3 more years of eligibility if he wanted them. But both those guys are back as well, they told you.
Yeah, both those guys confirmed that they're coming back for their 6th season. And not that it's a huge surprise, but when you don't hear from somebody and they could just decide I've had enough, I'm 5 years of college, you just never fully know. And those are not guys that are going to be big posting it on social media guys. So I just said, are you coming back? Are you done? And both definitively said that they're obviously back. And you can debate what the level of, I guess, quality of play that they've provided, but I think that there's a lot to be said for guys that have been here for a long time and have a lot of snaps. Aaron Witt, you look at what he did in terms of tackles for loss, or one of the more impactful guys at outside linebacker, and that's another room that's going to look a little bit different, but he's going to have a role as a run stuffer. And Barton, he might start again this year. It just depends. He played a lot of snaps. He's played the most snaps of the guys returning, which doesn't say much because there's only 3 guys returning on the defensive line. But 6th-year guys, I don't think you can have enough of those types of players at Wisconsin.
I mean, and he's also a good talker, right?
Very much so. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, which is obviously when you think about for the folks out there, when you're thinking about guys that you want back, that's how Jesse thinks about it. And I guess I shouldn't even say
part of the equation. Give me something good to work with.
I shouldn't even say Jesse. I should just say media in general. Which ones are the best talkers? Which ones are going to give you something, a line here or there that is going to make your story or help your story? So he's definitely one of those guys. We didn't know about that really, truly until we talked to him in fall camp last year. But he's that guy. And Aaron Witt, I mean, if there's football to be played, he's going to continue to play it. He has been through so much during his time at Wisconsin, not just football-wise, but off the field, unfortunately, as well. So, but again, as I said, I think he could probably have – he could be an 8-year guy if he wanted to.
Yeah, he
could be. I'm just saying he could be. I'm not saying he's going to be, but he could be. He's a bigger body, right? And I wonder if he's a guy that maybe is one of those guys who's going to have to put his hand on the ground.
It's certainly possible. I'm looking at that outside linebacker room, asking myself, what does this 2 deep look like? I mean, Daryl Peterson, Mason Reiger, the guy they got from Louisville. Tyrese Fearby played at Kentucky, but didn't have a ton of productivity. I mean, Aaron Witt is still in the 2 deep as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know exactly what that means in terms of how they utilize him. They got some young guys coming in, but he's played. He's 6'6". He's a big dude. And so I think that there's a role for him here, obviously, next season as well.
I love that. At least according to me and my 2 deep that I've put together, he is in the 2 deep.
Yes.
No,
well, I'm trying to put it together right now. I have to be honest. It's way harder to put together this defensive 2 deep than it was the offensive 2 deep because they've added
so many guys
at this point, 12 transfer portal guys. The D line is totally overhauled, and we haven't seen any of those people and have no idea where they fit in. And so on offense, when you add 5 guys, it feels pretty obvious. And defense, man, it's tough.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think another guy that, and I'm not saying we aren't talking about him, but Thomas Heiberger.
Very much so.
Yeah, a guy that's going to be certainly, I think, in the mix, would have been in the mix if he hadn't gotten hurt in fall camp last year. Uh, any other? We're getting towards the end of not. It's not over, but we're getting towards the end of this transfer portal thing, at least for a few months until it opens back up in the spring again for 15 days.
Yeah, because guys are going to report here and have to start off-season workouts, and I think they probably want their guys to be here for that and enroll in school and all that. But yeah, I mean, there's clearly a couple pieces that they need to add at cornerback, but 19 transfers. It's the biggest number they've had so far, and what a wild month it's been.
Who's your favorite ad?
Ooh, tough question. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are intriguing. I Tanner Koziel and Mark Hamper, like those guys.
You like production?
I like production. Give me that. Defensively, I feel like it's just it's a crapshoot, and I can't tell you who I think is going to come in and be absolutely dominant. I do know that we talked about this. Like, to me, the most interesting story is Matt Young, because again, you want to talk about productivity, best player at his position in the country at that level, and how will that translate? But definitely guys who are productive at lower levels are super appealing.
Yeah, he was. I don't know, it was officially, but was named the defensive player of the year earlier this week, right?
Yeah,
the Cliff
I think
Harris
D2,
Cliff,
D3.
The Cliff Harris Award for Matt Young. It what does it go to? It goes to, what does it say? The Small College Defensive Player of the Year. So not even Division III, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's across multiple.
It could be. Yeah, I need to zoom in on this picture here. Yeah, just a small college defensive player of the year. I don't know what small college could be. Like, is it based on enrollments, or is it based on where you're like where you're at in terms of division? Like, I don't. What does small college mean? Well, you don't know. I'm asking you questions you don't know. I apologize.
It's like D2, D3, all that.
It may be hilarious if it was just based on enrollment size, because then you could have, like, I guess I don't know how many people are at Vanderbilt, but like there's really small colleges in Division I that you can have a player like that in. Either way, Ricardo Hallman back, Ben Barton back, and obviously Aaron Witt back as well. Moving on here, Wisconsin filled out their coaching staff officially yesterday with the announcement of both Kenny Guyton going to from wide receivers coach to quarterbacks coach, which we've already talked about, and then Jordan Reed being hired as the new wide receivers coach. He was at Western Michigan the last couple of years and is now at Wisconsin. What do you think about Jordan Reed? I know we're still learning about him.
He's got 2 full years, I think, as a full-time wide receivers coach. I mean, you obviously start off as a GA and work your way up, but had some good success at Western Michigan, especially in year 1. I think Kenneth Womack was a guy they got as a transfer, and he became one of the best wide receivers, certainly in the MAC. So it's hard for me to know and exactly what that's going to look like, but they needed to fill out that spot because Kenny Guyton moved over to quarterbacks, and now they've got another young guy in the room.
That they do. So overall, the staff, the top 10 assistants have been filled out. There's going to be some analysts added here, as I said at the beginning at the top of the show. I'm interested to talk to these guys, which is something that is going to be happening relatively soon. And we haven't talked to Jeff Grimes yet. That's been a month. That one, I have a lot of questions. I don't know if he's going to have answers, though. Right? Like, I don't know exactly what his answers are going to be because do you think that they're going to allow him just to come in here and install what he sees as it, or do you think it's going to be what Luke Fickell wanted when Phil Longo here, which was a collaborative where some of the stuff they did at Cincinnati, some of the stuff that he did at North Carolina, mesh it together. I'm not talking about meshing the elite. That was defensively, and we're still waiting for that. But the meshing of systems, I assume that was something that Luke Fickell made clear, that we need adaptability. We want you to install that power run that you have. We're going to have some other aspects passing game wise that maybe we've done these last couple of years that we'd like to continue to do.
I just don't know why you would hire an offensive coordinator and not let him do his thing,
Uh,
which was
I mean, they did that already. That's
well,
why the
right.
question. That's why I'm asking the
It didn't
question.
work. That's what I'm saying. Like, it didn't work. So if you're going to make this move, you're making it because of the body of work that that person had. And in this second go around, because you believe what he does matches what you want to do. Of course, there's somewhat of a collaborative effort here. If you're the head coach and there's certain things you want to do, you talk about that before you make that hire. But I think the reason he's bringing in Grimes is because he can do both of those things. I think still 11 personnel is going to be the primary personnel package that we see. At least I think it was last year at Kansas for him, where there's 3 wide receivers on the field, but there are going to be heavier personnel packages where there's multiple tight ends, and that is what helps Wisconsin, I think, get a little bit more back to its roots. But in terms of whether he's going to have the answers, I suspect that a lot of those things won't have answers, because how can you know until you're around the guys in practice and start to implement and install? Now, you have to be able to have an idea of what your blueprint is going to be, and certainly I plan to ask that. What is your approach? What is your plan? And I think the easy, obvious answer is to say that I have a plan and we're going to tailor it to the skill set of our players and all that. So we're not going to truly know, but obviously that's a very important position, and I think people want to hear more from him. I certainly do.
Yes. Again, as I said, I think that'll be coming soon here, as everything gets finalized, coaching staff wise. That some of those voices will be heard from for the first time. I guess Kenny Guyton's been here, but some of those other voices will be heard for the first time since coming to Matt. I guess Jack Cooper's been here too. We'll get to hear the voices. We'll hear voices, and yeah. All right, let's close with some odds and ends here, and the odds and ends. His name is Darren Heitner. He's odd, but he is all. I mean, he's a lawyer. What are you going to do? That's not a shot at lawyers. My mom was a lawyer, but he has been hired by Xavier Lucas. That is the new, I guess, wrinkle since the last time we've talked about Xavier Lucas. Is he has hired an attorney who has called Wisconsin disgusting. He has said Wisconsin is holding Xavier Lucas hostage, and that they should do the right thing and allow him to go into the transfer portal. Wisconsin has responded by saying absolutely nothing. And I think that says about as much as you could possibly say. But I'll let you give your thoughts on it, because I have a rather strong thought on Darren Heitner. But I'll let you go first.
I did talk to him in that morning after he announced that he was representing Xavier, and it's nothing we haven't heard him state on X and social media platforms, largely that he said he had not at that point seen any contract, and all of everything that he's saying is based on one talking point, which is that in his belief, Wisconsin has violated what the NCAA rule is of that you have 48 hours after you submit your information for them to process the paperwork and enter you into the transfer portal. And they're trying to expedite that process. He had said that he reached out to a representative at the NCAA and had not heard back yet, but that if it does not go beyond that, he will litigate this further. And we have yet to see that too. But I'm with you, Zach. Wisconsin has not said a word. Wisconsin has declined to comment. Rob Master, the executive chair of the Varsity Collective, declined to comment when I reached out to him last month, and everyone involved with Xavier has not talked. Now we know why, because they've lawyered up. But I think even though Wisconsin has taken some type of PR hit in certain circles, they are doing this for a reason. And the point that I want to make, though, is a little bit away from this, but the storyline that has come out here recently is about Wisconsin and how this situation is going to negatively impact the Badgers' ability to recruit in South Florida. And I think it is insulting our intelligence to make that suggestion, because Ricardo Hallman, he's from South Florida. He decided to come back. Jameer Latimer was at Jacksonville State. He decided to come here. Is it true that Wisconsin's relationship with American heritage may be fractured? Yeah, I can certainly see that. Is it true that people in that area who are familiar with the Xavier Lucas situation are not happy with where Xavier is at, may suggest to prospects, why would you want to go to Wisconsin? Sure. But that's a big area. And you know what Wisconsin has? Opportunity to go play in the Big Ten in one of the two major conferences. And if you're looking for a financial avenue, that is still going to exist at Wisconsin. This is a very unique, special case that is clearly differentiated from the 24 other transfers who have decided to leave. And so I just think it's disingenuous to suggest that this is going to somehow blow up Wisconsin's ability to recruit in what has been a recruiting hotbed. They're still going to have success there, and they're obviously standing their ground for a very legitimate reason in my mind.
Yes, I think that last part is very important. His message on X yesterday was in response to a Pete Nako story. I mean, he's obviously he's playing a PR battle, which I certainly understand. But he said Wisconsin's silence is deafening, and I think it's as transparent as possible. You know what I mean? Like, why would they talk about anything? They feel good about their case. The people that are talking are the ones that may feel like they need the PR, to feel like they need to have people's minds thinking one way to get this to where they want it to be. He thinks he's putting pressure on Wisconsin, and it's not just Wisconsin either. It's not just Wisconsin, because he did lay out. I've never seen anything signed like this that the Big Ten is putting out. So this is not just Wisconsin. This is also the Big Ten. I think this is in reaction to a lot of stuff that has happened. I think this is the first time that a school has stood up, and I think this is school and a conference has stood up and said, all right, well, the NCAA isn't doing anything. They are letting people run roughshod over them, and we're tired of it. And we're not going to, I think this is the first chance. And this is a different case than any other situation Wisconsin has been in. We know that because every other guy has gone on and gone to a different place without any issues whatsoever. And this one is obviously different. But I am so sick of Darren Heitner talking about illegal this and illegal that. If it's illegal and you have a problem with it, shut the hell up and go to court and make it a case in court. Otherwise, I don't think anybody outside the Miami fan base wants to hear it. And I know what you're doing. We all know what you're doing. You teach at the University of Miami. You teach NIL law at the University of Miami. We know where Xavier Lucas wants to go. We know that was where he was going to end up and will end up as soon as the transfer portal, whenever he does end up there. Wisconsin, he's not going to play at Wisconsin again, but he may not play anywhere else next year either, based on how this is all going to play out, because they're putting their foot down. And I just am so tired of every day there being something else out there for Darren Heitner to throw at the wall and see what'll stick. It's a PR firm, and that's essentially what he's been. Shut up. You're a lawyer. Go and do your work in court. If you feel so strongly, which you clearly do, feel so strongly that you have a case and that Xavier Lucas is being, abused by Wisconsin, then go and do it. Just stop talking about it. Go and do it. Wisconsin's not talking because they know what their case is and they feel good about it. You clearly don't, or you'd be in court right now, and Xavier Lucas may be in the transfer portal, but he's not. And I don't know necessarily when that is going to be the case. Wisconsin feels good about it, and I think this is not just Wisconsin. I think it's the Big Ten putting their foot down and saying we're done. This is not the end of anything, but I think it is the start of school starting to fight back. And whatever that looks like at the end of this, I have no idea. But Wisconsin and the Big Ten clearly feel good about if this thing goes to court. And I'd rather it play out there than on X anymore, because it's all one-sided. It doesn't, whatever he says doesn't, no one outside of South Florida gives a shit. And by South Florida, I mean Miami fans. Those are the only people that care about this. There are 2,000 guys in the portal right now. There's going to be thousands of college kids in Florida that are going to go and be like, oh, I can go play at Wisconsin? Yes, please, because they're going to pay me. Wisconsin has the money to pay. They're going to pay. And while relationships matter, money, kind of like the NFL, matters more than anything else. And if Wisconsin comes down to South Florida and is like, I'm going to pay this guy and we're going to pay him more than anybody else, he's going to be here. So shut up about the recruiting aspect of it. I don't need to hear that either. It's stupid. What'd you say, insulting our intelligence?
It's insulting our intelligence to suggest that this is going to have ramifications that impact Wisconsin negatively forever, or really even temporarily, outside of a single school or a handful of people that maybe have relationships with players down there. It's a big area, and it's a huge
Go,
opportunity for a place like Wisconsin.
go look at the comments on every single one of those posts, whether it's a national writer, whether it's all Miami fans. It's nobody else. I shouldn't say that. It's Miami fans and it's NIL lawyers. That's essentially what it is. That is essentially who is commenting and taking issue with what is happening right now. Everybody else, I think, is to the point where it's about time. I am fully on board with kids getting paid. I'm not fully on board with kids signing something and then I don't want to do this, so I'm going to leave because potentially somebody else wants me, and because other guys got in my ear. You sign something. You're an adult. Maybe you have to abide by it. And if you don't, well, then unfortunately there's some circumstances or some consequences that you have to deal with. That's adulthood, unfortunately.
You want to be treated like a professional. This is what being treated like a professional is, and clearly, I think there's some bad advice involved here in making this decision. But in general, I think this story is starting to gain some national traction, largely because it's so unique. Yes, the majority of people who are crying out about it seem to be in the South Florida area. But I think where this has intrigue on a national level is just the precedent that this case or situation could set. And that to me is what makes this the national story, to see how this actually unfolds. And if Wisconsin stands its ground and should win, whatever the outcome may be, then that would set a precedent potentially for what happens in the future. But in general, man, this has been such a long, tiresome story that ultimately we know it's not going to lead to Xavier Lucas being a member of Wisconsin's football team anymore. And so we'll see, obviously, how it plays out here in the coming days and weeks. But I imagine we're going to continue to hear new things on social media, whether you like to or not.
I just don't like, at this point, you wouldn't want him to be a part of the program anyways. This is like in the NFL, you have holdouts, right? Like contract holdouts and like, I want to be traded if you're not going to, or cut me. And the guys in the locker room are still supportive. And I guarantee you the guys in the locker room are still supportive of Xavier Lucas throughout this situation. I think it's the exact same thing, but everything else involved in it is not. And but I will say that you talk about it being on a national level and it being a national story. And I would, I mean, I agree. I also think we're at the point though where people are tired of kids going one place and going another place next year, or a lot of people feel like it's ruining college football. And so they want regulations in place. Like people want stuff to change, and at least not to not pay guys, but to at least tie them to a university for a year or 2 years. Or if you sign something, nope, don't want to do that. I'm going to leave. Like people are tired of that shit. And so when it gets to a national level, even reporters, I think on a national level will be like, yeah, this needs to change. And I don't know that they're going to find a sympathetic audience that he clearly thinks he's going to find. I don't think he's going to find as sympathetic audience as he expects on a national level with this, especially if it were to go to court and you have a little bit more further details come out. The environment I think that we're in, and this is not just Wisconsin related, I think it would be any school in the country, at least for me at this point, just you got to stop allowing everybody just to roll through you. And this is I'm talking about the NCAA. And I think the schools and the conferences are tired of it, and are, at least one of them is willing to put up a fight here. And again, I just don't think they're going to find the sympathetic audience that they expect if this gets to be a bigger national story.
I think a couple things. First of all, one of the irksome things about this becoming a national story, and I have no problem with that being the case, is that people seem to be jumping in and wanting to weigh in without having an understanding of the full scope of the situation. They're basically seeing what the PR. They're basically seeing.
Welcome to social media.
Yeah, but they're basically seeing the PR battle on one side and saying this. Wisconsin, it is disgusting, and what Wisconsin is doing is wrong. And it's like, well, okay, but do you even know or understand what's fully at play here? And I'll be honest, I don't think any of us fully have the full scope because there's no contract being publicly presented and all the information. And Wisconsin's clearly keeping that close to the vest for a reason, because as you said, they feel like they have a strong case with whatever happens here moving forward. Secondarily, yeah, what's happening in college football in general, it's tough to swallow, but it's also where we're at now, where there are no restrictions on the ability to transfer every year. And so that I don't know what the resolution is, but ultimately it feels like the guardrail in place has to be a contractual structure where you're obligated for X amount of time. And I don't know what the answer to that is either. I don't know how you can say someone has to definitively be at a place for 2 years, unless that person is willing to sign and agree to that. But there is no universal guardrail in place. And that does make it, from the fan perspective, harder to follow and all that. But I'm just like most people in favor of the players getting paid. They certainly deserve to be compensated for what they're doing with how much money is at stake. But definitely something needs to change because there's just constant turnover. Guys coming for spring ball and leaving 4 weeks later. You just that's can't happen.
There were guys at Oregon that signed in December and entered the transfer portal like after the Rose Bowl. What? Like that's crazy. I mean, you literally just signed 3 weeks ago as a high schooler, have not done, I guess maybe if they were early enrollees and I guess, no, like it's crazy. Either way, we're both on the same page. They need to be paid. They need to be compensated, but there also needs to be some structure so that we're not seeing just the absolute Wild West that we have seen the last few off seasons. It's not sustainable. And it's certainly not good for college football. A lot of, I don't want to say apathy, but just people being like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I want to invest my time in, because you just don't know who's going to be there every other day. And I know that's ridiculous. I know that's maybe like an old guy look at it, but I understand it. Like even in the NFL, a guy signs a contract. It's a 1-year deal. Okay, well he'll be here for 1 year, but you've also got 3-year deals, 4-year deals, and like, all right, well, I know my guy is going to be here for at least a couple of years probably, and you can invest in it. And it's hard to do that in college football right now, but whatever. College football playoff coming up this weekend. Who you got? So it's I will say this: Texas and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, and it is obviously Penn State and Notre Dame down in the Orange Bowl. It very possibly could be you're going to get back-to-back champions from the North.
Yes, I'm going Ohio State. I'd mentioned this before, but the way they've housed the last two opponents in the playoff, they're playing really well, obviously. I think I'll take Notre Dame in the other one. It would be fun to see an all Big Ten championship game because of how much we've had to hear for so long about the SEC, even though I know Notre Dame is not SEC, but just in general to see a couple of Big Ten teams. But should be entertaining. At least that's the hope. We haven't seen very many entertaining games other than the Arizona State, I feel like, in Texas.
Yeah, the Arizona State and Texas. And I guess Georgia, Notre Dame was kind of, but yeah, I'm going to definitely take Ohio State, and I think Notre Dame is going to win that. I'd rather it be Penn State because the All Big Ten final is but it's like if you're whichever coach loses that, holy crap. Because it'd be like James Franklin still can't win a big game, even though he would have beaten Notre Dame. But, I mean, he's beaten Ohio State once, and it was, And if you're Ryan Day, you beat Oregon and you beat Texas, and then you lose to James Franklin, who can't win big games. To go along with what happened against Michigan, that'd be tough, but it'd be hilarious. So I would love to see the just absolute lose their mind fest that would be the Ohio State or Penn State fan base if they were, to play in the national championship game and whichever one lost. But it'd be great for the Big Ten. I'm not like, I don't carry I'm not carrying a freaking flag for the Big Ten here, but it would be cool. And it would also just make people's head explode from below the Macy's Nixon line, which is always fun. So, all right, Jesse, have a good weekend, and we'll be back next week. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Zach. Talk soon.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.